Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Man, I was buzzing with excitement as I pulled into the driveway, a whole day earlier than planned. I was picturing the look on Jess's face, how she'd jump into my arms, and little Sammy's laughter. But then, there it was, this shiny red Mazda I'd never seen before parked right where my old Chevy should be. Confusion hit me like a sucker punch. I got out, my heart already doing this weird drum. The front door was unlocked. Odd. Inside, the house was too quiet. Then, from upstairs, laughter, not the innocent kind, but something else, something that made my gut twist. I took the stairs two at a time, a bad feeling creeping up my spine. And there they were, Jess and Mike, my golf buddy, in our bedroom with my wife. They didn't even hear me come in, too caught up in there, whatever it was. My world stopped. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I was the guy in the driver's seat. Jess saw me first. Her eyes went wide, like she'd seen a ghost. Mike, that jerk, he just froze, sheet barely covering him. The room spun, and every corny line from every bad movie about cheating spouses played in my head. What the hell, Jess? I remember my voice sounded weird, like it was someone else talking. She started babbling, trying to cover up, saying it wasn't what it looked like. Yeah, right, Mike mumbled something, looking for his clothes. I couldn't even look at him. This was a guy I'd shared beers and secrets with. And now this? How long? That was all I could muster. Jess was crying now, saying it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But her words, they sounded hollow, empty. I felt this rage building up, but at the same time, I was just broken, you know? The argument got heated. I was throwing words like bullets, not caring where they hit. Jess was pleading, saying she was sorry, that she'd been lonely. I didn't want to hear any of it. It was like watching our life together turn to ashes right there. I stormed out, leaving her crying and Mike scrambling to get dressed. The last thing I heard was Jess calling my name, but it was too late. Something had shattered inside me, something I knew couldn't be fixed. I drove off, my mind a mess of anger, betrayal, and 1,000 questions with no answers. How long had it been going on? Had everyone known but me? The hurt was a physical thing, clawing at my chest. So much for the surprise homecoming, huh? Never thought I'd be sitting in a dingy motel room, my life turned upside down. Just yesterday, I was on top of the world, coming home early to surprise my family. Now, here I am, staring at peeling wallpaper, trying to digest Jess's confession. A long-term affair, with my best friend, no less. It felt like a bad dream, except I couldn't wake up. Jess cried her eyes out, saying it started as something small, something meaningless. But you know what? It didn't matter how it started. It mattered that it happened. She kept saying she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me. Sorry? That word seemed so small, so useless now. I couldn't stay there, not another second. I grabbed my keys, walked out, and just drove. No destination, no plan, just the need to be anywhere but there. The roads were empty, kind of like how I felt inside, hollow, echoing with every word Jess had said. Ended up at this motel on the outskirts of town. The guy at the front desk gave me a look, probably thought I was up to no good. If only he knew. I crashed on the bed, but sleep was a stranger that night. My mind replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I must have missed. Morning came, and with it, a decision. I couldn't let this slide. I found a divorce lawyer online, someone discreet. We met at a coffee shop, away from prying eyes. I couldn't risk Jess or anyone else finding out before I was ready. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, was a straight shooter. He laid it out plain and simple. Divorce was messy, but given the circumstances, it was straightforward. Then he dropped a bombshell I hadn't even considered. The paternity test. Sammy, my boy, was he even mine? That hit me harder than the affair. The thought of losing Sammy, of him not being mine. It was like a punch to the gut. Mr. Henderson said it was standard procedure in these cases, but nothing about this felt standard. I agreed to the test, not knowing, it was eating me up inside. Henderson arranged everything discreetly. I drove back to the motel, feeling like a character in some tragic movie. Except this was real life, my life, and I had no idea how this scene was going to end. You know, they say hope's a dangerous thing. Can lift you up, then drop you from 100 feet. I was clinging to this thin thread of hope that Sammy was mine. But when I got those paternity test results, that thread snapped. Not my kid. Not my son. I can't describe that feeling. Like falling into a cold, dark pit. I confronted Jess. Had to. I needed to hear it from her, needed her to look me in the eyes and say it. She was at home, looking like a ghost of herself. When I showed her the test results, she just crumbled. Everything came out. The affair, the lies, and yeah, Sammy. He was conceived during her fling with Mike. I remember she kept saying she was sorry, but it sounded so far away. My mind was racing, heart pounding in my ears. It was surreal, you know? Here was this woman I'd loved, trusted, and she'd just torn our world apart. Sammy, the kid I'd raised, played with, loved, he wasn't mine. The betrayal stung, but losing Sammy, that was a whole other kind of pain. Filing for divorce felt like the only thing left to do. I couldn't stay with Jess, not after all this. The trust was gone, love turned to ash. It's funny, in a sad way. You think you know someone, share your life with them, and then one day, it's like you never knew them at all. I met with Mr. Henderson again, told him I wanted to file for divorce, citing Jess's infidelity. He didn't seem surprised, maybe he's seen it all before. Paperwork, signatures, legal jargon, it was all a blur. I was just going through the motions, like a robot. Jess pleaded with me, said we could work it out for Sammy's sake. But how do you stay for a child that isn't yours? How do you look past such a lie? I couldn't. Maybe I was weak, maybe I was angry, but I just couldn't. That night, in the quiet of my motel room, I thought about everything. The happy days, the laughs, the plans we'd made. All gone. I thought about Sammy, how his laughter used to fill up the house. Now, there was just this deafening silence, a void where my heart used to be. I know some people bounce back from stuff like this. They find a way to forgive, to rebuild. But for me, it was the end of a chapter. A painful, gut-wrenching chapter. I had to close it, had to try and find a way to start over. Alone. Ever had that moment when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you gotta jump but scared as hell? That was me, the day Jess begged me for another chance. She was crying, promising she'd change, that we could fix things. But some breaks, they're just too deep to mend. I told her no. It was the hardest word I'd ever had to say. Part of me still loved her, you know? But a bigger part was just done. Too much hurt, too many lies. I was determined to move on, to find some semblance of peace. That's when the real storm hit. Divorce proceedings started, and man, it was like opening Pandora's box. Everything got public, and messy, real fast. Our once quiet, happy life became the talk of the town. People I'd known for years, neighbors, friends, they all had something to say about it. Word got out about Jess's affair. It spread like wildfire, the kind of juicy gossip that small towns thrive on. I'd go to the grocery store and hear whispers, see the looks. It was like we were on display, our private pain turned into public spectacle. And then, the picking sides started. It's crazy how these things go down. Friends we'd had dinner with, celebrated holidays with, suddenly they were choosing camps. Some sided with Jess, trying to be sympathetic to her mistakes. Others patted me on the back, saying I was better off without her. Family tensions rose too. Jess's parents, they wouldn't even look at me. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. My own folks were furious, said they always had a bad feeling about her. I didn't need their, I told you so's, but there they were, served up at every family dinner. Everywhere I went, it felt like I was walking through a minefield. Old friends became strangers, strangers became judges. I'd see Mike sometimes, in town, and the anger would bubble up all over again. But I kept my cool, mostly. Didn't want to give the town more to talk about. This whole process, it wasn't just about signing papers and splitting assets. It was like reliving the betrayal, over and over. Every legal document, every court date, it was a reminder of what we'd lost, of how far we'd fallen. But through it all, I kept my focus. I had to get through this, had to close this chapter of my life. The house, the memories, Jess, even the friends who turned their backs, they were all part of a past I needed to leave behind. I was looking forward to that final court date, to the moment when I could finally say I was free. Free to start over, to rebuild. It was a faint light at the end of a very dark tunnel, but it was something. Something to hold on to. Life's got this funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. After the whirlwind of the divorce, I thought I'd seen it all. But then came the news that Mike, the guy who'd helped turn my life upside down, had bailed on Jess. Scared of the public scorn, he took off, leaving her to face the music alone. Can't say I was surprised, but part of me felt a weird satisfaction. Karma, right? In the midst of all this, the custody battle for Sammy was raging. It was the hardest part, fighting for a kid I'd raised as my own, but who wasn't my blood. The courts saw things my way, though. They looked at Jess's infidelity, her unstable situation, and they granted me custody. Winning felt bittersweet. I was glad to have Sammy, but the circumstances, man, they were messed up. The divorce settlement was another blow to Jess. She lost the majority of our shared assets. The house, some of our joint savings, it all came to me. I didn't want it to be a battle, but things just played out that way. Jess was left struggling, both financially and socially. Her affair had cost her more than she'd probably ever imagined. I started anew, got myself a small apartment. It was nothing fancy, but it was a fresh start, a place free of all the memories that haunted me in our old home. Decorating it, filling it with new stuff, it felt like I was slowly piecing my life back together, one day at a time. Jess, on the other hand, she had it rough. I heard through the grapevine that she was struggling to make ends meet. Her social circle had shrunk too, with most of our mutual friends siding with me. I won't lie, there was a part of me that thought she got what she deserved. But another part, maybe the part that once loved her, felt sorry for her. Life in my new apartment was different. It was quieter, less chaotic. I missed the noise sometimes, missed the family life I thought I had. But this new silence gave me space to think, to reflect, to figure out who I was without Jess. Sammy visited on weekends. It was hard, explaining to him why things had changed, why Mom and Dad weren't together anymore. I tried to keep it simple, tried to shield him from the ugly truths. He was just a kid, after all. Seeing him in my new place, laughing and playing, it gave me hope. Hope that maybe we could get through this, that we could find some semblance of normalcy in this new life. As for Jess, I heard she moved to a smaller place, something more affordable. People said she was looking for work, trying to get back on her feet. Part of the town still whispered about her, about what she'd done. I guess some stains are hard to wash off. It's strange, how life works out. One day you're up, the next you're down. But through it all, you just keep going, keep moving forward. That's what I was doing, one step at a time, in my little apartment, with Sammy by my side. Life, has a way of turning around when you least expect it. Amidst all the chaos, something good started happening. My business, which I'd poured my heart into, suddenly began to take off. It was like the universe saying, hey, it's your time now. Success brought a new kind of energy, a reason to get out of bed each morning with a smile. But just as things were looking up for me, Jess reached out. She wanted to talk, said she missed us, wanted to try again. But for me, that ship had sailed. I couldn't go back to what we had, not after everything. So, I declined, as gently as I could. It wasn't about revenge, it was about moving forward. Jess's life, meanwhile, took a nosedive. She was facing isolation, not just from our old friends, but from her own family too. Her parents, who'd once treated me like a son, now disowned her. They were ashamed of her actions, couldn't understand how she'd thrown away what we had. It was sad, really. I knew Jess was struggling, trying to find her way back to some kind of normalcy, but it seemed like the world had turned its back on her. Back in our little town, people started looking at me differently. Where once there were whispers and stares, now there was sympathy, understanding, and even support. I'd bump into old friends at the grocery store, and instead of awkward silence, there were pats on the back, kind words. It was comforting, sure, but it also felt a bit surreal. I was the same guy, just a bit more broken, a bit more cautious. It was tough hearing about how Jess's parents had disowned her. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. That was someone I had loved, someone I had planned to spend my life with. And now, she was out there, alone, cut off from the people who should have been her support system. In a way, our roles had reversed. I used to be the one shrouded in whispers and pity. Now, it was Jess. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small part of me that felt vindicated, but mostly, it just made me sad. Sad for what we had lost, for what could have been. My business success kept me busy, kept my mind off the mess of my personal life. It was a blessing, really. Work became my sanctuary, a place where I could create, grow, and forget about the heartache for a while. As for Jess, I heard she was trying to rebuild bridges, but it was a slow process. People's memories are long, and forgiveness doesn't come easy in a small town. I hoped, for her sake, she'd find some peace, some way to make amends and move forward. Life's too short to live in perpetual regret. And me? I was just taking it one day at a time, enjoying the little successes, and learning to live again. The business, my little beacon of hope, was growing, and so was I. Life's a roller coaster, huh? Just when you think you're stuck in a loop, it shoots you off in a new direction. That's how I felt when I started dating again. Casual stuff, nothing serious. It was like dipping my toes in the after years of being afraid to swim. It felt good, liberating even, to meet new people, to have conversations that weren't weighed down by my past. Meanwhile, Jess moved to a smaller town. A fresh start, I guess. I couldn't blame her. The air in our town was thick with whispers about us, especially her. But you know how small towns are, news travels fast, and so do rumors. I heard through the grapevine that her new community was already wary of her because of her past. It's tough, starting over with that kind of baggage. In the midst of this, Sammy reached out to me. The kid was confused and hurt, and who could blame him? His world had been turned upside down just like mine. It was a tricky situation. He wasn't my biological son, but those years of raising him, they meant something. They meant a lot, actually. So, I decided to maintain a role in his life, distant, but supportive. I couldn't just turn my back on the kid. That wouldn't be fair to him. Navigating these new relationships wasn't easy. Dating felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. I was always careful, didn't want to rush into anything. The women I met, they were great, but I kept them at arm's length. Couldn't risk getting too close, not yet. I was still healing, still figuring out who I was outside of my marriage. And Sammy, he needed me, in his own way. We'd meet up, grab a bite to eat, talk about school, sports, normal stuff. I could see the questions in his eyes, the ones he was too scared to ask. Why aren't you and Mom together anymore? Why did everything change? I tried to answer as best as I could without hurting him more. I wanted to protect him from the ugly truths. Jess's situation weighed on me, despite everything. I heard about her struggles, about how she was trying to rebuild her life in a place where nobody trusted her. It wasn't easy for her, and part of me felt guilty for that. But then I'd remember the betrayal, and that guilt would fade. She made her choices, and those choices had consequences. Life was moving forward, slowly but surely. Dating. Dealing with the fallout of the divorce, maintaining a connection with Sammy, it was a lot. But I was managing, finding a new rhythm in this strange dance of life. There were moments of loneliness, moments of doubt, but I was learning. Learning to trust again, to open up, to maybe, just maybe, find love again. Sammy's presence in my life was a constant reminder of the good times, the happy memories. He was the bridge between my past and my future, a connection I wasn't ready to let go of. And as for Jess, I hoped she'd find her way too, find some peace in her new life. We were both starting over, in our own ways. Life's funny, isn't it? Just when you think you've got it figured out, it throws you a curveball. That's what happened with me and my new relationship. We'd been seeing each other for a while, and things just clicked. Before I knew it, we were talking about getting serious, and then, engagement. It felt right, like a second chance at happiness. Something I never thought I'd get again. On the flip side, Jess was trying to put her life back together too. She'd been trying to start a new relationship, but things weren't going so smooth for her. The past has of clinging to you, and in a small town, people's memories are long. I heard she was struggling, that it was hard for her to find someone who could look past everything that happened. As for me, I was over the moon when my girlfriend said, yes. We started planning a modest wedding, nothing fancy. Just a small gathering of close friends and family. It was a new beginning, a fresh start. But as we dived into wedding plans, I couldn't help but think about Jess. Was it wrong to feel a twinge of guilt? Maybe, but I did. Jess's struggle hit a new low. She was battling depression, reeling from all the losses she'd faced. It's one thing to hear about an ex struggling, but it's another to know they're suffering because of choices that involved you. I felt for her, despite everything. I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone. The news of my engagement spread quickly, as news does in small towns. Jess heard about it, and I heard that it hit her hard. She felt a deep sense of loss, they said. It's strange, how life takes these turns. Here I was, starting a new chapter, filled with hope and happiness, and there she was, stuck in a chapter that had long closed. I often caught myself thinking about how our paths had diverged so drastically. Once, we had shared dreams, plans for the future. Now, our lives couldn't be more different. It was a sobering realization, a reminder of how fragile happiness can be, how easily life can be upended. As the wedding day approached, I found myself reflecting on the past. Not with anger or regret, but with a kind of acceptance. What happened with Jess, it was a part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. I had a future to look forward to, a life to rebuild. And Jess, well, I hoped she'd find her way out of the darkness. Everyone deserves a shot at redemption, at happiness. So, as I planned for the wedding, I made a silent wish for Jess, hoping she'd find peace, maybe even love again. Life goes on, it always does. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you a second chance. Life's about moving forward, right? That's what I kept telling myself as my fiancé and I stood in front of our new house. It wasn't just a building. It was our fresh start, a symbol of new beginnings. The place was modest but filled with hope and possibilities. We were turning pages, leaving old chapters behind and writing new ones. Meanwhile, Jess's struggles seemed to deepen. I heard from mutual friends that she'd lost her job. It was a tough break, especially with everything else she was dealing with. Her spiral into despair was like a dark cloud hanging over her life. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy. Despite our past, I never wanted this kind of hardship for her. Our wedding day came, and it was exactly what we wanted, beautiful but low-key. A small ceremony with the people who mattered most. As I stood there, exchanging vows with my new wife, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It was a moment of closure, a final seal on the past and a hopeful gaze into the future. But life has a way of reminding you of things you'd rather forget. Right after the wedding, Jess tried to reach out to me. I don't know what she wanted. Maybe to congratulate me, or perhaps seek closure for herself. But I couldn't go back there, couldn't reopen old wounds. So, I chose to ignore her attempts. It might seem harsh, but some bridges are better left uncrossed. The news of my new wife's pregnancy came as a joyous shock. We were going to have a baby. It felt like life was rewarding us, giving us a gift after a storm. We announced it to our friends and family, and the outpouring of love and support was overwhelming. This baby, it was a symbol of our love, a beacon of our shared future. I often wondered about Jess during this time. The news of our pregnancy would inevitably reach her, and I couldn't help but think about how it would affect her. It must be hard, watching someone you once shared a life with move on in such significant ways while you're struggling to keep your head above water. But as I looked around our new home, felt the excitement of impending fatherhood, I knew I had made the right choices. Moving on wasn't just about leaving someone behind. It was about embracing the future, embracing hope. Jess's journey was her own to make, and I sincerely hope she'd find her footing. As for me and my new family, we were just at the beginning of a beautiful journey. A journey filled with love, challenges, and the promise of new life. It was time to look ahead, to build a future filled with laughter, love, and happiness. A future where the past was just a distant memory. Ever noticed how life has a way of balancing things out? Well, as my life started taking this beautiful turn, with a new baby and a loving family, Jess's life took the opposite route. I heard through the grapevine she'd become something of a recluse. It's weird, thinking about someone who was once so vibrant and full of life now shunned by the very friends we once shared. Our baby's arrival was nothing short of a miracle. Holding that tiny bundle of joy, I felt a happiness I hadn't known was possible. My wife and I, we were a team, building this warm, loving environment for our little one. It was like the universe was making up for the rough patch with an abundance of joy. Jess, on the other hand, struggled to start afresh. Her past seemed to follow her like a shadow. I'd occasionally hear about her attempts to rebuild her life, to start over. But the whispers of her past mistakes seemed to haunt her at every turn. It's tough to move forward when your past clings to you so tightly. Sitting in our living room one evening, watching my wife and our baby sleeping peacefully, I couldn't help but reflect on my journey. From the heartache and betrayal to this moment of peace and contentment. I felt grateful, you know. Grateful for the new beginnings, for the second chance at happiness. But the story of our lives isn't just about the happy endings. As much as my life had flourished, Jess's had taken a downturn. She was living alone, isolated from the friends and life she once knew. I heard she spent a lot of time reflecting on her choices and their consequences. It's a tough pill to swallow, facing up to your mistakes, especially when they cost you almost everything. It's strange how life pans out. Here I was, living this happy, fulfilling life, while Jess, who had once been at the center of my world, was now just a distant, fading figure in my past. It wasn't a story of triumph or revenge. It was just life, with its ups and downs, its lessons and its consequences. As I looked at my sleeping family, I realized how far I'd come. The pain and betrayal were now just chapters in my story, not the entire book. I had moved on, found love and happiness again. And Jess, well, I hoped that she would find her peace too, in whatever form that might be. Our lives had diverged onto such different paths. Mine filled with the laughter of a child and the love of a family, and hers, a quiet journey of self-reflection and redemption. It's funny how life works out, isn't it? One moment, you're down and out, and the next, you're on top of the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, you find that the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unbelievable stories. Hit the bell. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. At the time this went down 4 months ago, my wife, 35, and I, 33, had been married for 2 years. I was scheduled to go on a 2-day-long business trip, leaving extremely early one day and returning the next day in the evening. Well, after 5 hours of driving, the trip was canceled. I wasn't terribly bothered because I was used to driving and would be compensated for my time. I decided to return home unexpectedly. When I arrived, I was surprised to see another car parked beside my wife's. It was her brother's car. He was a buff dude, married with a baby that my wife would often babysit. She loved it because she looked forward to becoming a mother. Her and her brother were really close and enjoyed hiking. It didn't matter what the weather was like, all year round they would go on long hiking expeditions together. I didn't mind, it was their thing, and I was not an outdoorsy person. I'd usually work a little more or dedicate time to my hobby of building miniature boats. Although I fully supported their relationship, I became a little weary of my wife's brother when he became exceptionally emotional at our wedding and planted a huge kiss on his sister's lips. I couldn't do anything about it, it happened so fast. He asked me to forgive him later, blaming what he did on the high emotions he felt seeing his sister get married and leave the family. When I arrived home and parked behind my wife's car, I could hear slow music playing loudly. It was an odd setting to imagine my wife and brother-in-law in. I didn't have to imagine it because I walked in on them slow dancing together. He was holding her close to his body, their embrace was that of a romantic couple's. When they noticed my presence, they broke apart quickly and looked really guilty. I knew my marriage was in jeopardy by their expressions. My wife tried to say her brother needed emotional support because his marriage was struggling. To me, that did not explain why they were slow dancing in my living room. As hard as it was, I didn't ask them any more questions. They were aware of how odd it looked. I didn't have to wait long before my wife went to go babysit her baby niece one day. She accidentally left her phone behind and I found her WhatsApp. It revealed that she was sexting her brother, sending pictures, saying I love you, and arranging hookups with him by claiming she was going to babysit. It was the most disgusting and disturbing discovery I ever made in my life. I threw her phone and ran to the bathroom to be sick. Everyone always assumed they were really close because they had trouble making friends when they were younger and shared an enthusiasm for hiking that no one else in the family did. I wouldn't confront her about it immediately because it certainly wouldn't have stopped them. I realized that I was just a cover husband so she could have a secret sexual relationship with her blood brother. I went back to her phone as I boiled with anger and betrayal and took screenshots to send to myself. I planned out my revenge, which involved a bit of acting on my part. It was excruciating to see her behave so normally when returned home, like she didn't just hook up with her brother behind my back. I too acted as though everything was normal. I laid awake beside her that night in our marital bed. The very next morning, I hired a PI to get me photos of them. When I announced the truth, she wouldn't be able to wiggle out of the consequences. Not long after, she claimed she was going on a hiking trip with her brother and I played along, notifying the PI. He called me late that night and notified me that she got hotel room with her brother along the beach a few hours away. I started packing my things because it was only a matter of time before I got pictures. I didn't know why they weren't actually hiking together this time, but I didn't care either. At this point, I didn't care about anything and just felt numb. I received pictures of them walking on the beach and boardwalk like newlyweds. His hand on her butt, full kisses on the lips, staring into each other's eyes over drinks at the bar, both of them entering a hotel room, clearly in a romantic relationship. I was ready to leave, but before I left, I invited her immediate and extended family and friends over, including her brother's wife and baby. I printed large copies of the pictures I received and hung them all over the house, starting at the front door. On my way out, I left a note on the door instructing them to let themselves in. Little did they know, I left town for my friend's house with all my belongings and no plans to return. They called me after they entered home, frantically asking me what those pictures were. I spelled it out for them on speakerphone. These two members of the family were incestuous freaks that have probably been in a sexual relationship since they lived with their parents. Then I told them where they currently were if they didn't believe me and wanted to see for themselves. Hours later, I got a call from my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was screaming and I could hear the chaos in the background. It became clear that her entire family and a few of her friends had shown up at their hotel. Her brother was being beaten by cousins and the hotel called the police. She asked why I did this to her and I told her she deserved it. She had been living a lie that she wouldn't be able to continue anymore. I told her the divorce papers were on the table and she started wailing, so I hung up. I was hurt enough as it was and didn't want to dwell on how her life would turn out. Her mom called me a few days later to apologize on behalf of her daughter and son. She updated me and said the police never arrived at the hotel, so hotel staff started breaking up the fight themselves. In the chaos, the brother and sister fled to escape scrutiny. The whole family was a wreck for a few days, but things are settling amongst them now. The wife of the brother is filing for divorce as well, along with custody and child support. Before they fled, neither of them signed divorce papers, so that's a waiting game for now. I'm relieved this was all exposed when it was because I can't imagine continuing that relationship any longer without knowing the truth. I just want to put this all behind me and I feel like I'm on the right track. I found a nice place and continue working for the same company I was in. I'm continuing to take this one step at a time. This whole thing is still so surreal for me. OP, I can't imagine the emotional torment you've been through. I'm so relieved you didn't decide to start having children with her before all of this was revealed. It would have been horrible if she got pregnant by her brother and tried to claim the inbred child was yours. Although this discovery caused you pain, it is so much better that the truth is out. I love how you handled this situation because you knew announcing it immediately wouldn't cause them to stop and might have even backfired on you. You were patient and fast, aiming to gather the much-needed evidence you required. These two people are horrible, not just because of their actions, but because they married two people and hid the affairs they had. I believe luck is on your side. This couldn't have been worse if it came out years later. I wish you the best of luck, OP. Now for today's second story. My wife and I were both busy working people when I discovered our marriage was over. She was 27 and I was 33. We were only married for 2 years, but maybe that was a good thing. On the day it went down, we arranged a short getaway together at a cabin almost 2 hours away from our house. After we arrived and got settled, she asked me to look up a recipe she wanted to make for dinner. My phone was almost dead, so I plugged it in and wondered how she was going to handle this. Over the past few months, I noticed she was distancing herself from me. She was on her phone way more and even added a passcode on it. This was weird because we worked so much, who would be trying to access her phone? She was so open with me up until it all changed and she just didn't feel the need to tell me about her day. So I told her my phone was charging to see what she'd do. She unlocked her phone and tossed it to me as she stirred, telling me to look it up on hers. I did so and read it to her. As I was just about to lock her phone again to be locked out of it forever, a silent WhatsApp notification appeared. I didn't know she had that app. I clicked on it instinctively and it led me to a string of messages between her and another man. The first 2 messages were, "Hey, how's it going? And I miss you so much. Can't stop thinking about how good you feel." I must have turned white because I felt the blood drain from my face. My vision became blurry and I left the room with her phone. She was still cooking, unaware anything was wrong. I focused my eyes and stilled my trembling hands so I could keep reading older stuff. It spanned back farther than I was willing to look. I took screenshots of their sexting pictures, talk of past sex and plans for future sex. And there I love you. I grabbed my keys with her phone in my hand and left. I didn't say anything to her. As I drove, I forged a message to her lover saying that the getaway ended early and he should meet her at a specific restaurant at a specific time. He agreed. I drove for 2 hours, although it felt like forever. I was in deep thought about what my future held now that my marriage was over. I already had anxiety about the next woman. I fall in love with cheating on me. I wondered what this guy was going to try to do or say to me, but it didn't really matter. The most I wanted was an explanation. When I saw him enter, I recognized him from the pictures and videos. I entered the restaurant right behind him and wrapped my arm around his shoulders. He jerked away and looked at me with major concern. Before he could say anything, I told him who I was, that he stole my wife from me and that we should talk about it. I led him to a table, started recording on my phone, which now had all the evidence from my wife's phone as well, and told him to spill the beans. He hesitated, but I told him this was the least he could do. He told me they had been seeing each other for about 10 months already. They were introduced by coworkers and instantly fell for each other. In a few weeks, she was in his bed. He swore she was the one for him and he was in love. I told him he could have it. I had no more use for her. I thanked him profusely for saving me 18 years of child support. I told him where she was and asked him to go pick her up. I drove home with a broken heart. It was broken before, but it was worse knowing how long ago this started. My phone rang and it was the landline from the cabin we were staying at. My wife was panicked, asking me if I was okay and why I just left like that. She added that she couldn't find her phone and forgot we had a landline. I called her a liar and said she shouldn't have let me see her phone if she was guilty of having an affair. She was stunned and started stuttering to make excuses. I told her she need not bother, that I had already met with the man and got all the proof I need. She started yelling in surprise, trying to clarify where I knew and who I spoke to. I added that he was on the way to come get her and she should pack all of our stuff. She said something else, but I hung up. I arrived home and packed up what I needed to be okayed for a few months. I didn't know how long she'd be in the house before she left. Thankfully we got a prenup so I wouldn't lose the house or pay her alimony. The last thing I did was update her social media. Changed her status to single and posted a selfie of the two. I put her phone down and heard it immediately start blowing up with confused friends and family. I called my best friend to vent and cry, and not only did he have space for me to stay for a while, but he also arranged for me to meet with his cousin, a divorce attorney. Before my friend arrived to pick me up, my wife was brought home by her lover. She was upset with me, which was ridiculous, and she kept asking me questions. For someone who knew what was going on, she sure was clueless. I started playing the recording of her lover explaining how they met and started sleeping together. She started crying her eyes out, claiming that he was exaggerating their relationship and she never planned on leaving me or continuing to see him. When she said this, he was standing in the doorway unbeknownst to her. He was offended and left. I thought good for him as he drove down the road and my wife screamed in frustration. I told her to pack her stuff and get out of the house because it belonged to me. I added that I'd send divorce papers to her parents' house. She sat on the front step crying as I left. I heard that she was still living with them when her boyfriend left her after an astounding 2 months. Since I had been paying for her schooling, she struggled to afford it on her own. Her parents couldn't afford it and actually made her move into a tiny apartment with her much younger sister. Meanwhile, I met the love of my life and we have our second child on the way. I can now say without a doubt that my wife is faithful, loving, and meant for me. I'm so thankful I decided to leave my ex right away without staying and trying to work it out. I am so sorry you went through this, OP. Thank the universe you didn't end up raising an affair child as your own or paying child support for years. It's extremely lucky you discovered the truth when you did and had the strength to take the steps you needed to. She started sleeping with a coworker without much hesitation or thought about her marriage with you. It turned out that even the man she cheated on you with dumped her. This is an excellent story to help spread hope to people that have been cheated on. It's definitely possible to let go of what you're used to and exist outside your comfort zone in order to heal and live a better life. I wish you and your new wife all the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. This Reddit story is called, I Caught My Wife Giving Some Guy Oral Pleasure in an Abandoned Parking Lot. Hello everyone. Today was the worst day of my married life. It was absolutely crazy. I caught my wife of 9 years sucking on some guy in an abandoned parking lot. This is how I caught them. Well, the day started like any of my other work days. As I'm driving to work, I am listening to the radio, and transportation or public works for the city is announcing certain road closures and what time they will be closed. So, I have to plan my route back home. When I get off, I make a phone call to my wife and ask her, is she aware of the road closures? And she said she had heard they were closing certain roads and she also had to plan a different route to get home. She then said she would take a few back roads that she knew of and should be home around the same time I got home. I said, okay, told her I loved her and got off the phone. As my work day draws to a close, I'm monitoring the road closures throughout the day to make sure nothing has changed too drastically. My workday ends and I proceed to drive home like always, but based on the detours and road closure information, I decided to take a different route home. I take a different exit than I normally take and drive by a few abandoned buildings in the city. As I am driving down the road, I shockingly notice a car that looks like my wife's car. So, I wanted to get a closer look to be sure. I make a U-turn and drive into the parking lot slowly. Lo and behold, it is her car. I recognize the license plate. Suddenly, I see two people raised up in the back seat. I saw a silhouette of them. I wasn't close enough yet. So, I stay in my car until I see them disappear again. As they disappear, I slowly get out of my car and make sure I don't close the door. I leave it cracked. I walk up to her car. What I saw next made my heart drop and I am angry at the same time. She is going down on some guy in the back seat. I tapped the window and said, what the hell? They both jump out of their skin. My wife's mouth is wide open. The guy quickly starts to put his clothes on and exits on the opposite side of the car. My wife is still in shock that I caught her cheating. She starts crying immediately and apologizes and apologizes. I told her she just killed our 9-year marriage. She begs and pleads. I told her, you want me to take you back after having another guy's junk in your mouth? I told her, you must be out of your damn mind. I asked her, how could you do this to us? As she begins to speak, a police cruiser pulls up, gets out of his car and asks if everything is okay. I told the officer, she is my wife and we're having a disagreement. Surprisingly, he says, okay, and gets back into his vehicle and drives off. At that point, I told her I am done talking to her and I walked back to my car and drive home. I get home and she pulls up right behind me. She goes on to tell me she has felt neglected mentally and not feeling attracted to me in the last year. I interrupted her and said, okay, but I didn't go outside the relationship to cheat. I then tell her she didn't even communicate these issues. Instead, she finds someone else and cheats on me. I told her, I don't think we can recover from this. You broke my heart and I don't think our marriage will survive. I told her, I have no desire right now to reconcile. Absolutely not. After what I saw, I said, there is nothing you can say or do. I caught you cheating. She then looks at me and says, what are we going to do? I said, I am going to go stay with my parents for a while until I can think this through. She starts pleading again. I told her to stop. I then tell her, you probably need to start making other living arrangements. After that, I walked away and start packing some things. So, I can get out of the house and go to my parents. She walks behind me and puts her hand on my shoulder and I push her hand away. I say to her, don't touch me. I walk out of the door and get in my car and drive away. I don't know when I will be back to make another post, but rest assured, I will. This Reddit story is called, Found Out My Wife of 15 Years Has Been Cheating. I need help. I do not know what to do. Found out from a phone call from the wife of the co-cheater, both strangers to me. I am devastated. I confronted my wife about it right away. When bad things happen, she is who I confide in. But, I need someone else to talk to about this and I don't feel like I have anyone to talk to. I do not feel like I can talk to friends or family about this. At this point anyways, they have all known us for a long time and we're close to respective spouses as friends as well. I don't know if I'm protecting my wife or myself, but I can't talk to friends or family about this for now. My wife and I have been together since we were teenagers. Married 15 years. We have 2 children. I have been in a bad spot at work for a while now. I don't like my job and I want to switch careers. But I'm paid very well and was eligible for a large payout in a few more weeks, which I've had as a goal for the past year. My wife took on a different position at work 2 years ago that was a significant change in number of hours per week. I didn't want her to take that on since kids, life already felt strained. But it was important to her. So, I've worked hard to try and support this. But I have been struggling through these last 2 years to cope with work and life. The last 4 to 5 months have been particularly difficult. I have felt exhausted, worn out, unmotivated. I have mentioned this multiple times, but we always said I'd stick through it to the payout and then make the switch to the career I want. A couple of weeks ago, she was looking upset. And when I asked what was wrong, she said she felt disconnected from me and basically did not love me and was not sure if she should be here anymore. This was absolutely devastating for me to hear. And it scared me a lot. And this is the first she mentioned anything like this. And only said it because I was prompting to ask what was wrong. I have been struggling to cope with things in general. But I've been working hard the last couple of weeks to try and reconnect with her. But looks like it was already too late at that point. Found out she has had this relationship for past 3 to 4 months. My wife says they physically met up twice in January on her days off. They supposedly broke it off last week, which my wife says was mutual. But I think that's when they got caught by his wife. From text messages she found. My wife is extremely remorseful. She says she loves me. I do not know what to do. I do not know what to think. How do people recover from something like this? How do you rebuild trust? How does someone do something like this to someone they love? Why wouldn't she talk to her friends? Or to me if things were this bad in our relationship? Did I deserve this? Was I neglectful of her? The thoughts of them physically together is killing me. So, I've been trying to keep away from dwelling there. I am worried about my kids if things don't work out. They do not know anything. And I have been trying to act normal around them today. I am scared thinking about not having her. I have never felt so hurt before. She means everything to me. I have been working so hard doing what I thought was best for my family. And now, none of it matters. Feels like it was all for nothing. None of this feels real. I'm stuck in a bad dream, and I can't wake up. It feels so surreal writing all this. At this point, all I've said is, we have to go to marriage counseling. But I can't really answer whether we should work it out or not. I never thought this would happen to us. I would never do this to her. Co-cheater's wife said she would be willing to chat with me if I wanted to do so. I might take her up on that offer. But it's so hard putting one foot in front of the other right now. And knowing what to do. I feel completely immobilized. This comment was made by Beck01221. She was planning to leave you. Which is why she admitted that she no longer felt loved by you. So, she could leave you, and you not know she had ever cheated. The problem is, that the wife caught them. And he wants to work on the relationship. And the wife realized she would be left with no one. If she had a problem, she should have talked to you. If she never communicated that she had a problem, then it's on her alone. You cannot read her mind, and understand she needs more if she does not communicate with you. Very few cheaters will ever stop cheating. The fact that she only stopped after getting caught means she will probably find someone else and continue cheating with them. Especially if she continues to lie about what happened. Only physical twice, lol. It's up to you whether you want to work through this or not. But your kids will be smarter than you give them credit. And will pick up that something is wrong. If you want to stay with her, then you have to fully accept and trust her. Otherwise, your kids will see you are both unhappy. And they may go on to have unhappy relationships with people who cheat. I don't know why. But maybe they grow up thinking it's normal. You need to make a decision what you are going to do. I think you should go to a lawyer and fully discuss what would happen. So, you are aware of all your options and the financial impact the decision will have. Your wife cheated on you. Have time to heal. And don't make any big decisions. Especially since you don't seem to be 100% confident on leaving her. Even though I think you should be. discuss with your lawyer and think through your own emotions. And maybe get therapy. Just focus on yourself for a while. Hey guys, I'm sorry if this will be a long read. But I want to be honest and get some advice or even vent. My girlfriend and I have been together for 5 years. Never expected this to happen. I will be the first to admit that looking back, that I haven't been the best boyfriend recently. I stopped being attractive, became antisocial, and just wasn't who I was. We barely go out, barely hang with friends. And looking at it, we were basically roommates who sometimes had sex. The romance was dead. And I blame myself. And I only see it now that this happened. She did voice her opinions. We talked and tried to make things work. But, between me being depressed, working and her working a 12-hour job, we really never changed. Both her and I, things haven't been the best. Things were rocky a lot of times. No spark like in the beginning. But, we always made up and apologized. I noticed her behavior change. We started arguing more. She hit me for the first time. Shoved me. And basically, we grew apart and made up. This mini cycle continued. And looking back, we were in a rut. I was still working at home, being depressed and generally not being a good boyfriend. Just wanting to stay in bed and watch movies. I wasn't doing anything to create excitement and romance. She would go out with my sister and her friends sometimes. And sometimes invited me. I usually always declined. Writing this now, I see how bad I messed up, to be honest. I was basically comfortable and made no effort. I barely tried. But, in my mind, we were comfortable. And I did not realize how much I actually neglected her emotionally. I was content waking up next to her and having sex and having fun at home, to be honest. Anyways, she started selling food at home to start a business and was meeting new people. One day, I noticed we had an argument. And she started sleeping with her phone under her head for a few days. Things had gotten rocky at that point. I got angry and woke up multiple nights to go through it. But I stopped. She then went out 2 nights in a row. And we barely talked. She went with her sister. Nothing happened. I know this for a fact. And it was just them. When she came back, I took her for a drive and talked about the relationship and the ups and downs. And she basically admitted that she was texting to someone else. She told me the truth. My heart dropped. We went home and decided to break up. And she began packing. She cried all night. And basically could not sleep. I felt horrible and so did she. We talked about what caused it. Her saying lack of attention. Sex. Being boring. And her just being emotionally drained in the relationship. And that she was deeply sorry for what she did. She showed me her phone. But had already deleted most messages. But gave me access without fighting or stopping me. She was very honest and was remorseful. We do want to work it out. But honestly, I don't know if I can trust her. I am on the fence. I also realize how I also messed up. And wasn't being the man she needed. And I am willing to change. I do believe her when she said nothing happened between them. And that she stopped talking to him before we had the talk. Because she realized it wasn't worth it. I asked her if she was unhappy. Why didn't she just leave? She couldn't answer. I'm just torn if we were to get into another rough patch. And she does it again. Any advice? We are willing to make it work. I know I was wrong. But I just feel hurt that she would do that instead of breaking up. As I was unhappy also. But didn't entertain anyone else. I do believe we can make it work for good this time. And I am willing to change. It just hurts knowing that she had feelings for someone else. TLDR. My girlfriend of 5 years have a rocky relationship recently. We both became boring and static. She admitted she found interest in another guy she met. Selling food and was texting him on and off. But she broke it off. I am heartbroken. But I was also neglecting her emotionally. And I wasn't the best in my relationship. We both want to make it work. But I can't get over that she had feelings for someone else. And hid it for so long. We want to fix it. Is it possible? She was very honest about her needs and what caused it. She could have kept it hidden if she really wanted. But did admit her faults and apologized and was remorseful. If this story shocked you, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping real-life stories. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never